What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to episode 12 of the U.S.S. Enterprise D tutorial. I'm Zero Elite, and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. If you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. Today, we're going to be doing some more work on the neck of our ship, and we're also going to do the outline for the deflector dish in front of the lower hull. Um, Now, a lot of the stuff that you're going to be seeing me doing today on the neck, we're going to be adjusting, but you're going to need to do this also just to keep yourselves in the same point where I'm at. Um, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this. This is going to be kind of a long video. So I'm going to be going with a cut line and going along the edge of our neck and starting to add some thickness to it. Because one of the things I was talking about in yesterday's episode was that I don't like how the two pieces are basically connecting between the front of the neck and the sides. They're not really blending in well. And I'm not going to lie, this kind of eluded me for a little while. And there was a couple of things that I tried um, that just didn't really work. Um, and I can already say right off rip that thickening up the neck on the sides really wasn't the solution to go by. We really had to kind of layer it down and maybe start off a little bit thicker from the top and work our way down to making it thinner, which is ultimately what we're going to end up doing. Um, but we need to get on the same page and at least have the same thing going. So I'd recommend everything that I'm doing now, you need to be doing this with me, because eventually when we start to make more changes to the neck, it's going to be based off the changes that we're making now. So if you don't make those changes and you're just trying to build what I'm doing later, you're likely to have more problems with it down the road. Um, I wish there would be more of a simpler way to go about this, but at the end of the day, this is just going to be one of those things when you're building a ship from scratch, there's going to be a trial and error period. And this is the two places where that's going to definitely take place is on the front piece of the neck and the deflector dish. That's hands down the hardest parts that I've done on this ship. But if you liked what you saw in the teaser trailer for the Enterprise D, then I promise it'll be worth the work, because we will get to that point. There's just going to be a little bit of a trial and error period to get there. So what we're doing right now is that we're just going to be thickening up the front base of our neck right now. So you can see that I'm adding the white concrete on the sides instead of the quartz. And I'm doing this so that the quartz, or excuse me, that the white concrete sticks out, because this is not something that we've used for the whole build. So this way, if I decide that I don't like this or I want to get rid of it, it's something that's easy to identify, that I know that I added this as kind of like a temporary block to where I could take it out at a later point if I decided to. Now what we need to do now is get some lighting in on both sides, because it's a little bit dark as we're starting to add our layers. And it's only going to get darker as we go, especially as we add more stuff on the ship and even close up the saucer. It's going to get incredibly dark on our ship. But kind of a long video today, like I was saying, about 30 or so minutes. I'm trying to cram as much as I can into these episodes without them getting super long, because I really don't want to get to a point where I'm putting out hour videos. And I was actually, when I was editing this morning, I was originally going to have it longer. But then when I saw the length of time that I was going into, I was like, man, like I'm already hitting 30 minutes. Like I really don't want to go over that. So at least at this point, while we're making these changes, it's going to feel like it's going by a little bit slower, but we're making consistent progress on this. And, it's just going to be kind of a trial and error period to get the neck where it needs to be in the front. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to fill in the sides of our neck. And this is also going to make it a little bit easier later on when we're doing editing. We're just going to have to basically shave off stuff rather than rebuilding a ton of it. It's not going to be as hard as you really think to make these adjustments later on. But I think where we end up on today, it's just ultimately going to be one, way too thick for the front piece of the neck, and it's not going to curve right. Because if you look at the Enterprise D from the front angle, the neck, it definitely gets narrower as it goes down. Well, I won't say mine's perfect. I think it's definitely not perfect. I think it's still a lot closer to what I've seen other people attempt to do. Um, we got a couple more rows to do on this side. We're going to go on the last row and finish this off, and then we're going to go over to the other side and do the same thing. Because I was starting to think to the point that maybe, like, what I could do is like have the neck like kind of shave back. And you'll see what I mean as we go further along in this episode, because we're kind of going to end up on that point. I think by the end of today's episode, where it's gradually going to have like different layers on the sides going backwards, and it's kind of like the right idea, but like I was trying to do it from the wrong angle, essentially. Um, all right, we got a couple more to do here, and we'll be in pretty good shape. Yeah, this thing has just been a beast and a pain to build at least this section of it. The neck and the deflector dish were hands down the two hardest parts on this ship so far, and it's what's taken so long on this ship and what kind of held me up a little bit, because like I kind of got to a point where it's like when I was doing the neck and the deflector, that I was just like, no matter what I did, I just wasn't happy with it. And I just kind of made the decision, like, you know what, I'm just going to keep working on it until I end up on something that I'm happy with. And like I've said in the past, best way to do that is to throw something down and to start comparing it and see how it looks to the reference material that we're using. In this case, a 3D model of the Enterprise D, looking at it from different angles and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. And while this doesn't look terrible, it doesn't necessarily look like the Enterprise D, at least on this front piece right here. So now we're going to add another layer, but now I'm going two back, but I'm still going with a cut line. So I'm just following the pattern that we have pre-existing right here. Kind of hard to mess that up. As long as you stay with that pattern, you're in good shape. We're going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going two back and just going with the cut. Now you can kind of start to get a gauge on what I mean by that. It's layering back as it transitions from the front. And like, I think it was worth trying this, but it just ultimately, it just, when by the time that we were done with it and I looked at the front of the neck, I was like, man, like that's just way too thick and it's not giving me what I want from it. But again, I will say that when I went back and I finally got it to where I wanted it to, it did make it a lot easier because these extra layers that we're adding in, I really only had to start shaving stuff away. There wasn't a ton of building that I had to do at that point to get it where I needed to get it to. So that's definitely going to make things a little bit easier for us. Um, I don't think I've really done a heck of a lot of editing while we're doing builds. I think like the only two times I really did a lot of that um, was on the top portion of the Disco Era Enterprise right behind the bridge. I think I remember we spent a little bit of time reworking that to make it right. But I think hands down, the neck and the deflector dish is going to be the two areas that we're going to be spending the most time with on the outside of the ship. Um, so now we've gotten the left side done. We're over on the right, and we're just going to fill in everything between the left and right side from the lip that we've added on. And we're going to need to replace that candle just so we have some extra light right here. And remember, again, those candles, that's just temporary lighting. We will go back and redo the lighting. One of the cool things I am looking forward to doing today is finally starting to wireframe a lot more, or start getting that going on the Enterprise D, the lower hull. We're going to be focusing after we finish making some edits to the neck today. We're going to be starting to wireframe out the front of the lower hull. um, which that would be pretty cool. But um, we won't be getting a chance to fill all of it in yet. We're really going to be focusing on the neck and at least the wireframe of it. So now we're doing the same thing again that we've done now before. We're going back by 2, and we're going with a cut, following that pattern. So you can definitely get an idea of what I was going for. I thought that this would work. And I think before we even settled on this, I think I go back again. I think I try to make it a little bit further back to blend it in. But even that, like it didn't really look right. All right, so let's do that. Same thing now on the left side. Then we're going to bring this line all the way back. And I'm sure somebody at some point is going to say, well, why don't you just blend in the 2 curves on the sides and just make that point right there? And the reason for that is because the neck is actually a lot longer than where the curves are in the sides where they would have met. And I was actually at one point, I was considering doing that. And then I realized that if I did try to do that, then the neck would have been way too skinny. Because the neck is kind of fat from the sides when you look at it. I mean, it is definitely long. Um, Not quite as long as like the Kelvin Enterprise, the Constitution class, but it's still like it's got some length to it. Um, so that's something that I definitely want to try to maintain as much as I can. But I mean, definitely do your own research with this. Look, type in, go on Google and do a search for USS Enterprise D in Minecraft, or look on YouTube and see if you can find pictures that people have posted or videos where they kind of get close to the neck. You're really not going to find a lot of them. And the ones that you are going to find, they're not going to be patterned out the way my ship is. It's going to be a lot more of random blocks that they just kind of hodgepodge together to get that shape to come out, or it's going to be that shaven look, which I'm not a fan of either one of those. I always feel that these ships, they're made by man, so they should be mathematically sound. That's just kind of my take on it, and that's what I'm sticking to. Which, in this case, it can kind of present a problem because we just haven't come up with the correct pattern to really make it work. But once we do hit that, now, once we go back again, if I ever decide I want to make another Enterprise D or another ship of this similar look but maybe slightly different, like a Nebula class, I have had 1 or 2 people ask for that. But if I ever did do something like this again, now I've got the patterns to do it. So it definitely make this a lot easier going forward. And this is why, again, I said that this is going to be much more of a realistic tutorial because when I did the Disco Era Enterprise, I've pretty much not necessarily mastered all these patterns, but I remembered all of them, from what I had done on the other Constitution classes. So that's where it was kind of like a lot easier. I was really able to show you the best of both worlds. But I think that this is very important, everything that I'm showing here, because it shows you my process, my thought, my thinking on the decision making that I've made in different things that I've tried. And some of you, maybe you'll try similar things yourself, and this will put you in scenarios to think of what you can do to maybe get around it, you know? So it's definitely a good thing to have when you're shipbuilding, when you're doing custom ships like this, because um, ultimately, especially as we branch out and do more ships of a variety, I'm only going to be presented with scenarios like this more often now, to where how can we get around this? What can we do to make this look the way it's supposed to look? And I think that this was a great attempt right here, but it's not panning out the way I really want it to. I think when I was building the neck, I swear I think I spent like 2 weeks or something like that just working on the neck alone, trying to get it right. Because it just seemed like everything that I did, no matter what I tried, it just wasn't coming out the way that I was kind of envisioning it to come out in my mind. So on this side, you can see the bottom lip. I'm going to be stopping at that cut line right there, which is definitely a good marker for you to stop yours also. If you wanted to bring it all the way back to the neck, you can, but I decided to stop on that cut line for the bottom row, and kind of worry about the rest of it as we fill in the lower hull. But now we're just going to fill in this gap on this row here. We still have a little bit of time to go in today's episode. We still have about 18 minutes left. I think we're only going to be adding, this might be the last row that we add on the neck. There might be one more, I'm not sure. But I know that right after this, we're going to be going right over to doing the wireframe for the front end of the lower hull, which is definitely going to help to give the ship a lot more of its shape and get more of an idea of how this is going to start to turn out. All right, let's replace that light. And now we just got to fill in this side. So another thing I've been thinking about is definitely what my next ship's going to be on Minecraft. I haven't had too many people commenting lately, but it's definitely something that I've been thinking about. I'm definitely going to wait until I'm done with the Enterprise D, at least building it anyway, before I start working on my next build. So I just decided that after going through that, when I was on the tail end of the Cerritos, I'd actually started working on the Enterprise D. And I was able to get through what I needed to do on the Cerritos, but going forward, I think I'm just going to focus on doing one ship at a time. This way I can dedicate myself when I'm getting on here to working on that ship. But still, I want to think about what my next build's going to be. So if there's any ships that you want to see me do, be sure to drop a comment below and let me know what ships you want to see. So kind of going back, I messed up. I need to go right up to the cut line for the bottom row and stop just to make it match the right side. All right, now we're in good shape. Yeah, no, drop a comment below. Let me know what ship you want to see me build next on Minecraft. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a ship, it can be anything nerd related in general. If I get enough people that hit me with that idea, then I'll definitely do it if it's possible to do. And because I'm going to be doing these tutorials indefinitely going forward, and I've gotten a great response so far out of the tutorials that I have done. Gotten a ton of views. So I just want to thank everybody again for tuning into these episodes and watching them, commenting. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much. But yeah, I mean, getting back into this, that neck, I mean, it's just, it was really worth trying this, but it's not curving in like it needs to. This is honestly another reason why I wait to start my tutorials, because I want to wait until I get to a certain point, because I'm not sure how long it's even going to take me to do them, because like this is a clear example of it where it could take me a little while longer just to work on this specific area. And if I was doing these live, it could have maybe been a week or two before the next episode was out, because I'd be stuck on this one area. But the benefit of this is now that having waited until the outside was done, now I can just go in and with editing, just add that stuff in, uh, merge it into episodes, and you guys don't have to wait. We just go right through, so that'll be pretty cool. So we're going to add one more row here. Again, going two back and with the cut, following the pattern in front of us. And at this point, we're making the thickness of this thing monstrous. It's way thicker than it needs to be. But I think at this point I was just kind of set on trying to see through the idea and then maybe seeing how I could fix it, rather than going back to what I had before. Yeah, because from the front now, like two things are happening. The sides of the curve here are getting hidden now by the thickness of the front, and the front is starting to look a lot more like a Constitution class with the thickness, and I'm not feeling that. I'm not feeling that one bit. It looks like doo doo. All right, on the bottom row, we're gonna make sure we're gonna stop with the cut, and we're gonna fill this side in. All right, need to add another light source there since we're getting rid of that. Because I think what I was really thinking was that I could just gradually every 2 rows just keep bringing this back until it's all the way back. But if I had continued doing that, I mean, the neck would have just become massive. And it definitely wouldn't have looked as elegant like the Enterprise D neck does look. Because like when I look at the Enterprise D, the neck, it reminds me of like the neck of like a king cobra, the way it fans out on the sides. And we've got some of that going on here, but we need a thin base in the middle that's kind of curving to really make that work. How you doing on time? We got about 11 minutes left. I'm pretty sure this is the last row that we're gonna do. There might be one more, but I don't think that there is. All right, got 2 left. Well, one more after this. I'm only going up to that cut line. All right. And you can kind of get a sense what I was really going for is like as you look, you can see these rows up here. They're blending in with each other. So that was kind of like what I was thinking as these lines they would intersect as we go up, and this would be a way to blend it in all the way going down. And I mean, if the neck was much bigger, maybe that would have worked. I don't know, but it wouldn't have necessarily looked like the Enterprise D, which and that's what's hurting it right now. Now at this point, I'm just looking at my 3D reference. I'm going back and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm just trying to figure out a way to make this work, which we're not necessarily going to settle on today. It's going to be a little bit of a process to get there, but we will get there. I think this is honestly the only angle that this front piece actually looks good. All right, we're gonna take a little bit of a break from working on the neck, which is something else I recommend, that if you're getting frustrated, which I clearly was up until this point, best thing to do is walk away, take a break. Come back to it with a fresh set of eyes, or work on something else if you still want to build, and just come back to it later. So right now we're going to mosey on over to the lower side of the hull, and we're going to start working on the outline for our deflector, well, what's going to become our deflector dish. You can see I'm starting with blue blocks because I don't want that to blend in. I can always go back later and change it. And I'm not going off of any pixel circle generator. I'm literally just looking at the front end of the Enterprise D and trying to build a shape that looks kind of like it. Now, after building so many circles, I've kind of like developed like, well, I know like more or less kind of like what those patterns are going to end up as. So we can use some of that a little bit to start building out the outline, because it is going to be similar the way it transitions down. It's not going to be exactly the same, but it will be similar. We may have to shave off like this side here, maybe transition downward a little bit quicker, but once we get up closer to the neck, it is going to be a little bit more like what it is right now. Doesn't look terrible, but one side is longer than the other. So I'm either going to have to make that right side longer or this side shorter. And what I just did above was kind of working, so I'm going to try to repeat that and see how it looks. I mean, the shape isn't bad, but it's too, the way it's going like this. That's what's kind of setting me off a little bit, where it's not exactly where it needs to be. They need to have more of an arch going down maybe on the sides. We're going to throw in some more sea lanterns behind us so we can see it. Now that looks better. That looks a lot better. But the higher levels here, that's still kind of throwing me off just a little bit. I'm very gingerly adding layers as I'm going down, so making sure I'm not going too far on each side. If I do a couple on one, I'm going over and doing a couple on the other, especially since I'm just free building like this at this point. I don't have a set pattern in my mind. I'm just kind of trying to come up with a shape that looks like the Enterprise D from the front. That doesn't look terrible. It really doesn't. I'm still not set on this area right here, but like this is more or less what we need. The way this arches down, because that is like pretty close to Enterprise D. So far, so good. Now we're gonna start going downward and in. Add one more. Keep that the same on top and bottom. Now we're gonna do the same thing on the right side. Let's get some more sea lanterns down. Now we will go back and we'll get rid of the sea lanterns, but we need them there now for the purpose of building because it is really dark in this area. So far that doesn't look too bad, but I think the only thing, it might be a little bit small. We might have to go back and make this a little bit bigger maybe. Now let's do the same thing on the other side. I think I might keep that pattern going as we transition down. I don't know, that could work. But then again, the only problem I'm going to have with this, having it this size, is that it's going to be a little bit too small. I tell you what we can do, once we get this set, we could always come back and just use the same pattern that we have and just make it a little bit bigger if this ends up working out. So far, I mean, if you just look at the shape, not necessarily the size, but the shape, that is pretty close to how the Enterprise D looks. It almost kind of looks like a flattened bell. Not a completely flat bell, but if you look at a bell and you start to flatten it a little bit, it really has a very similar shape to that. And that's just where one of the things where I talk about where identify the shapes that you're trying to build. And that's exactly what I think when you look at the Enterprise D from the front, it looks like it's almost like a bell that's been scrunched down a little bit. So once you identify that shape, it starts to become a little bit easier to build out your ship. But the only problem with this, now if we look at this from the side, it's going to make our lower hull, with the current size we have, it just way too small. But we've got a pretty good base to go off of here. Like I said, I was wanting to make this episode a little bit longer because I'm about to go back and rebuild this a little bit bigger using the same pattern that we have. But we're going to have to save that for the next episode. And but once we figure out the size of this, we're really going to start rocking and rolling on this. It feels like we're going at a little bit of a crawl right now because we're trying to figure some things out. But I'm telling you, this will definitely be worth it as we go forward. But anyway, I just want to, I think that's going to wrap us up today. And I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in today's episode. If you did enjoy this content, please help me out. Hit that like and subscribe button. Comment below. Let me know what you thought of the video. If you just want to say hey or what ships you want to see me build, definitely appreciate everybody that takes the time to do that. You all are awesome. Thank you so much. And Yeah, you could always catch my new Starship Evo builds coming, dropping on Mondays. My Minecraft videos dropping Tuesdays through Thursdays. And also, don't forget new subscribers. Don't forget to hit notifications on so you always get notified when those new videos drop. And yeah, anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me today. I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in today's episode. And I hope everybody has a happy and safe weekend. And I'll catch you on the next week's episode.